So how did he do, sir? What made him special?
Okay, so one of the first things that we talked about was he faithfully pursued God, and we know that from 2 Kings chapter 10.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so here you have this great chasm of all these years, and some people could go, oh yeah, Jehonadab said that, and that was a quote-unquote good word, that it couldn't have just been a good word. I mean, you're talking about 200-something years, and they're still not only referring to him, but they're still adhering to the precepts that he laid out. And when we look at 2 Kings chapter 10, we realize that he faithfully pursued God. We see that he served with a king called Jehu. Jehu was like, man, the two of these guys were literally just confronting evil of their day. Many of you out there in our podcast world, you've heard of Jezebel and Ahab and all that. Man, that was during that time.
Right.
So here you have Jezebel. She's trying to kill all these prophets of God and the people of God, and Ahab is basically letting her do all this. He's kind of enabling her to kind of do this.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole other teaching about all that stuff. But here's Jehu, this king, and here's Jehonadab. And Jehonadab's basically serving the king. And he's like, hey, man, I'm with you. And we're going to destroy all this evil. Man, this is what God has said. We're going to live by this. We're going to eradicate evil from our land.
Right.
And so we know that he faithfully pursued God. That
Right.
It wasn't just he pursued the king and served the king, but he pursued God.
Mm.
And then we talked about how he faithfully rebuilt the altars, which is what him and King Jehu really did, is that when you eradicate evil, then what do? You rebuild the things of God.
Right.
And he rebuilt the altars of God.
Right. Absolutely. All right, so that, again, just kind of taking us back here. Right off the bat, we see that Jehonadab had intentionally focused on his relationship with God.
Yep.
And that's kind of what one of the first aspects that made him special. That's kind of one of the first aspects that made that lasting impact on his family for generations to come. Out of that focus, though, don't we see him turn his attention to other aspects of his life, not just his relationship with God, the Father, with Yahweh, but with other aspects?
Absolutely. We kind of see this this father.
Mm-hmm.
This is where this kicks in. He's not just serving King Jehu, and he's not just serving God.
Right.
But we know now that he kind of reinvested all that back into his family.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing we were talking about on Sunday is not just as fathers, but as people, that our relationship with God, everything else flows out of that. And we reinvest that back into our families.
Mm.
So whatever God is sharing with us through his word, through prayer, whatever that is, as we serve God, that as God pours that into us, we reinvest that now into our families. And that is fruitful living.
Right.
The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, all these things, faithfulness that comes out of us. Well, if it comes out of us, where does it go to? It goes to the people that are closest to us.
Sure.
And so we know that because 7 generations later, they're still talking about Jehonadab, that he invested whatever the Lord was putting in his heart,
Mm-hmm.
he invested it back into his family. He didn't just serve God, but he served his family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he didn't just spend time with God. He spent time with his family.
Thank you so much for taking time to listen to this portion of our podcast. If you'd like to hear this message in its fullness, visit our podcast, which you can find at thpshreveport.com. The message is called Faithfulness, a Conversation with Scott Etheridge. Thank you so much for being part of our THP online community.